Welcome to another episode of Masks Off. I'm Kim, and I'm so excited to have my friend Deb Blum, and she is back for a second visit. And I'm so excited. We have such a great conversation coming up. But before we dive into the conversation, let me begin with the quote. And the quote is by our guest, Deb Blum. So here's the quote. Whatever we judge and make wrong or bad in others is within us somewhere. The path to inner peace and greater connection requires us to acknowledge that we are that too and reclaim that abandoned part into wholeness by Deb Blum. And I know why you're laughing. Oh my God, this is such a hard one. Holy freaking but we'll get into that in a minute. First, for those listeners who have not met you before, do you want to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here too. And so I have been a coach for over a decade. I've worked with women and I've been coaching on self-love and authenticity and helping women to really show up fully in their lives. And in the past couple of years, I've taken both my life's work with my clients plus my own personal journey, and I've pulled it together into a program called the Whole Soul Way, which I know you know all about.
Mm.
And the Whole Soul Way program is a 15-week soul nurturing accelerator. And I primarily work with women who have busy minds and high expectations. And I help them to unhook from all of the fear and the pressure and the conditioning so that they can feel more inner safety and confidence and strength to be their truest selves in the world and to live and love fully. So it's a pretty cool, intense program. It's awesome, but it's been really fun. And then just a little bit about me. I am a mom of two boys who are 18 and 20 and a recent empty nester. And I've been married for 21 years, living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I love all things growth and healing. And I love to hike and be in nature and do all kinds of fun stuff like that.
I love it. And I just want to go in so many directions right now. We could talk about so many things. But let's talk about the quote. Let's start there because it was really you talking about this quote with me, because we are friends as well, that I all of a sudden whoa, these light bulbs just started going off in my brain of oh my goodness. When I'm in judgment of another, I never put two and two together that I was in judgment of myself and that I was cutting off that part of myself. And I'll just give one example and then I'll let you go into talking about it more, because this is the work you do. You're, in my mind, you're the guru on the shadow work. But one in particular is, and it sounds harmless, and it sounds maybe like a little teeny tiny example, but it really isn't. It's huge and profound. I am aware that I am constantly looking at other people and judging them by their weight and their body image. And I won't say it outwardly, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, wow, that person is really heavy. Or, oh, that person really just lost a lot of weight. Oh, look at all the weight she put on. And this kind of inner dialogue would go on since I can remember, since I was old enough to understand and see that people gained weight and lost weight. And I would say that for me, it probably is around the age 11, because that's when I developed. And I developed like that. Like one day I was flat as a board. The next day I had huge boobs, overnight. And I had put on 40 pounds, it felt like. And I was very aware, very, very aware of my body being different, especially since a lot of my classmates had not developed yet. And I looked very different from the rest of them. So I was really tuned into that. And then it never dawned on me that throughout my life and moving forward, that when I judged other people or noticed that I was cutting off that part of myself because I hated myself, because I felt so different and so bad about myself when I put on that weight and change. I was like acutely aware of other people's bodies, and I was just cutting off that part of myself.
Mhm.
Breathe on that one.
Breathe on that one. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's not, I think you're spot on though, that it seems like a small thing, but it's so, so huge because not only is it huge because I think you're not alone.
Yeah.
I have my own version of that story. I have my
Mm.
own, similar version. It's not exactly the same. Um, yeah. And, it's so interesting because, well, let me ask you a question. When you realized it and you saw that that's what it was, what shifted for you?
So what shifted was then I was able, like now that I have this awareness of what's happening and I understand the shadow work and I understand that I was cutting off that part of myself. Now, when I go and do my own inner work or I use my program and I go inward, my adult self is now able to come in and nurture my child self that was feeling so ashamed for being big or overweight or whatever you want to call it. And then my adult self is able to come in and say, oh, like, I love you, or of course you're judging other people. Of course you wanted to like cut off from that part of yourself, but it's okay. And now I include it and I allow it. Now, does that mean that I love every part of my body right now? No, because there's other things going on that age is happening, like wrinkles and so on and so forth. So I don't love every part of my body, but I'm able to now integrate and include and say, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. And that's what my little girl wanted. You're okay. You're lovable no matter what. That's the shift.
Yeah. And so does it translate into feeling more peace? Like, does that translate into
Oh,
feeling
yeah.
more peace?
Yes, it does. And I'm not even aware that I'm judging other people about it anymore. Like I'm not even noticing anymore.
I know. Isn't it so cool? Because that's really like, I like to think of it as that we have this built in system, right? That tells us everything that's ready and desiring to be integrated. So
Mm,
when we're judging someone else, it's really our amazing mind that wants to be like, we want to feel whole and integrated. And the way that I look at it is when we're young, we cut off from these parts because they're too hard for us to bear. We don't have the skills. We feel powerless. We don't know what to do. And we have all these feelings and we're like, I can't go through life just feeling all of that stuff. So we shove it down into our unconscious minds unconsciously.
yeah.
Sometimes we do it purposefully, but often it's unconscious. And then as we get older and we have greater capacity and we have more inner strength, we start to see the ways that we're projecting that stuff out into the world. As you said, we're judging another person, we're judging other people. And when we do that, we then go, oh, if we know this, we go, oh, thank you. I get to see in another person the stuff that I cut off from. And then when you did that, you were able to say, I don't necessarily like that part of me. Like you might even still have a complicated relationship with those parts, right? But you're no longer in the place where you're in denial of it. You're not like, I'm going to deny that existed, right?
Right.
You're like, I'm going to take it in and see that, wow, I'm judging other people because I'm judging myself. Where am I judging myself? Where was I judging myself? Why did I do that? And I love that you brought in the inner child because that is the key, right? Then it's like coming into her and saying, ah, I understand. I understand why you judge. I love you and I love you. I love you. At least I love you, like, in spite of our weight, right? I love you. Our weight isn't the reason why I love you. Our weight can fluctuate and I can still love us. I can still love the whole of us. So I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. And your example, I bet you will land with just so many people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it's hard for people to really grasp this concept because here's how it plays out in relationships as well and has in mind. Like that was an example, like some with me personally and just how I saw the world. But now, like, take relationships, and so many people will have anger and resentment toward a loved one, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, what, and the finger is pointing out, you are this, you are that, you are blah, blah, blah. And what is wrong with you? Right? Total resistance to how that person is
Yeah.
and how that person shows up in the relationship. And what you were saying a moment ago, and if you want to expand on it with this, because you held your hand up for those that are listening, in the sense that you are showing the mirror, that the person on the other side is a mirror to show us what we have cut off from ourselves or we are disowning or abandoning ourselves for. So in relationships, even though we want to point the finger, we want to blame the other person for what we're feeling or experiencing. We really can't, right? It's not about blaming.
No, I mean, but I do invite people. I always say to people, like, spiritual people do blame and judge because
Yeah.
if you didn't, then you wouldn't be, first of all, you wouldn't be a human. And second, you wouldn't be given the opportunity to find these parts in you. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, the mirror that is shown for us is to help us to come into wholeness. I believe our soul longs for wholeness.
Yeah.
You know, like life happens, right? Life, trees, trees are born and they die. You know, flowers have short seasons. They come, they die. Nobody's like judging. They shouldn't be dying. You know, they shouldn't die, whatever. But we do. Humans do. Humans go, that shouldn't be this way. It should be this way. They shouldn't do this. We shouldn't, we shouldn't do this. Anytime we're judging, it's an opportunity for us to come into a kind of like a more neutral relationship with everything, right? To a place of, like, we talk about love, and I think love is ideal maybe, but I remember you and me, we had a conversation at one point about that sometimes it's hard to love, and you use the word include. And I think that's what I like to help people to see, that like it's really just getting out of denial.
Yeah.
It's getting out of resistance. It's getting out of cutting off from and coming into, like, hey, I may not love my thighs, but I'm no longer going to pretend my thighs don't look the way they look, or I'm no longer going to pretend that I don't even have thighs.
Yeah.
We come into a relationship with it. We say, I have a complicated relationship with my thighs, but I'm not going to go completely pretend like I hate them. And so therefore they are cut off from me. Right. It's, how do we come into a relationship? Well, that's the same with like when our partners show us something or friends show us something. I remember the first one that I learned was when I was sitting in therapy, and I would come in and I just wanted to say that I was um, like a ruthless judger. Ruthless. I mean, it's hard to believe it only because I know now I'm so accepting that I was a ruthless judger, and I suffered a lot for it because I was like around the whole world. Everything could be better. They could be better. They should do this. He shouldn't do that. And my husband was the worst of all. And I remember being in a therapy session and saying, like, he's so materialistic. And I was going on and on. And then I had the benefit of having a therapist who made me own my stuff.
Yeah.
It was,
Beautiful.
yeah. And so she walked me through this process that I didn't even know she was doing. And it suddenly hit me that I had this like look of like,
Ooh.
you're telling me that I'm materialistic? What? And it was like what you said, it can be hard because someone would say, I think people will say, well, why would I want to include those negative parts about me? Why would I want to look at where I'm materialistic? And my reason that I share with people is because, first of all, the suffering is in the resistance.
Totally.
The suffering is in the resistance, the saying, like, I don't want that. I don't like it. That is suffering. The other thing is that we can become more, we don't have to become the thing. In fact, it's the exact opposite. When something's in our unconscious mind, it plays out as patterns, as you talk a lot about patterns, right? It plays out as patterns. It comes up in sneaky ways. It seeps underneath the door, in these ways that, like, insidious ways in our life, and it sabotages us. When we shine a light on the unconscious mind and we look and go, what's in there? Oh God, that's really, then we can at
Like, oh
least,
no.
right, right. But then we get to say, okay, I can see that I have the potential to be materialistic at times too. Then I get to be in choice. And that's what I think the beauty of shadow work is it puts you into choice in your life rather than unconsciously suppressing, cutting off from things and hiding things. We get to say, okay, I see it. I see that in me. And then I know my potential to cause harm. I know my potential to do things that don't feel in integrity anymore with me. I get to choose instead of those things unconsciously seeping out. So I didn't even know I was materialistic. And guess what? I was judging. And just like you, when I realized it was in me too, I didn't feel so much disdain and judgment anymore for my husband.
Yes.
It
Yes.
just wasn't there.
That's the beauty, because then it neutralizes almost.
It
And
does.
I love that you brought up that example, because I also share that same experience as well. And I've had that same judgment toward my husband. So materialistic, so materialistic. I want to say two things about owning my shit. Is one is that it's nice that I can say that he's the one with the problem, but I like reaping the rewards and the benefits of him being materialistic when we go on a nice vacation. And if we do fly first class, or we do stay in a nice hotel, or I live in a nice house, like, I like it, but it's almost like I have to put the mask on him. Like, it's because he wants it. And I have to be humble. And the reason why is because there is an belief system, an inner dialogue, a pattern that I learned when I was little about it was a badge of honor to be humble.
Mhm.
And it was better to have less,
Mhm.
because those who had more and were like rich or whatever, materialistic, there was something wrong and bad about them. This was the messaging. And so then being conditioned as the good girl, quote unquote, well, I have to be a good girl. I have to be, like, unseen, and I have to not be flamboyant or materialistic, and I can't bring attention to myself, and all of these multi layers underneath it. So then when I notice, oh, I kind of like having material things, I like having nice things, I had to push that down. Like, no, that's not okay. So it's like, well, then make my husband be the one who, so I don't have to be the bad one, but I can still, like, have the benefits. Look how freaking insidious that is.
Totally. Yep.
And then it's
Exactly.
about coming back and including that part of me, and not shunning, shaming, right? Because that's what we do. I don't think we're aware of it, but when we cut off from those parts of ourselves, we are shaming
Yeah.
those parts of ourselves.
Well, yes. So we're shaming those parts of ourselves. We're cut off from them. And therefore, we cannot experience true self love because
Exactly.
self love, it just as you said. So when we were children, we had to abandon ourselves in order to win the love and approval of other people. So we did cut off from our own sense of validation, approval, and love. We cut off from that in favor of getting it from our primary caregivers, which was actually wise. It was really smart
Yeah.
because it was a survival mechanism, right? And we had to do those things. Or maybe we didn't have to do them, but we thought we did. We definitely thought we did. And then as we get older, we we have to have a moment in time where we realize, wait a second, I have been abandoning myself forever, and I don't want to do this anymore. And I don't want those parts of me to feel shame. I don't want those parts of me to feel unloved. Other people kind of made me do that to for myself,
Mm.
for my survival, or my brain made me do that. But I have a choice now. And I don't want to perpetuate the wounds of self-rejection, or I should say perpetuate the wounds of rejection first, right?
Yep,
The fear of rejection and abandonment, but I don't want to do that to myself. Right.
exactly.
And that's the reason when we do this, the reason why we feel greater peace on the outside and on the inside is because we're coming into greater wholeness. We're integrating, we're saying, I love, maybe we don't love it, but
Yep.
we include it, but it still feels like love because it feels like
Yes.
wholeness. It feels like we're less fragmented,
Yes.
right?
And one of the core woundings that we have is, or fear is of, or let me rephrase that. What does Brene Brown say all the time? We want to know that we are worthy of love and belonging. So when you just said we're including, like inclusion to me means there's that part of worthiness of love and belonging. So, right, we might not love it, but we're including it. We're integrating that part because that is, after all we, not all, but one of the core things that we want is to know that we are worthy of love and belonging. So, if we aren't getting it from the outside world, thus one of the biggest problems that we have in society is because we are scouring the earth for the outside world to tell us that we are worthy of love and belonging. And the truth is, we need to do it for ourselves, source that from within. And then, like you and I've talked about many times, as soon as I start to do that work and I include, I no longer feel the need or the urge to hold my husband or anyone else in judgment because now I've included that part in me. So if I can include it within me, I can include it for the other as well. So having compassion and acceptance, maybe not love, but acceptance and compassion for myself, I can now have it for the other, thus improving our relationships.
Exactly. And that's actually, it's almost like, it really comes right down to the more that I can include and love about me, like increases my capacity to be able to include and love more about you.
Yeah.
And it's like this is why it gets a little bit confusing when people talk about self-love or shadow work, seeming like shadow work is like the darkness, or
Yes.
self-love is selfish or something. And it's like, I look at it and say it's the exact opposite. It's the most selfless thing we can do, because when we have filled our own cup, when we have, loved ourselves that much, we are no longer looking insatiably for everybody else. Are you meeting my needs? Do you like me? Are you saying the right things? All that. We've sourced it internally, and now we're spilling over and we're able to give it to others.
And I'm so grateful. Like, literally, I'm so grateful to you because you started the conversation. You planted the seed in my head, and then it just flowered from there. And I'm now in a space and a place where I am now filling my own cup. And I am now learning and feeling and knowing and experiencing what unconditional love is, when everything else every other idea or notion that I had about love was not love. It was codependency. It was
Mhm.
codependency, not love. Everything that I thought I had, like, because it was all based on that need. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I will be a people pleaser so that you will love me. I will be a perfectionist so that you love me. I will perform so that you think I'm worthy. And that's, I'm sorry, people in my life that I've been codependent with, that it wasn't like real love, but I'm here now and that's all that matters. And now I'm just like pouring over, spilling over, and giving real love now.
Mhm. Yeah, and because it's sourced from that inner well. It's sourced from the inner well. I know. It's funny. I remember when we first started talking about it, we were talking about the judgments, and you were saying to me, well, I am compassionate to the other person, right?
Yep.
And that is something that I think gets a little bit tricky, right? Because we think, oh, I'm compassionate to why the other person is that way. But that's just one step of it, right? Because the
One.
other one is the compassionate to ourselves and why, why we have been that way. And by the way, one thing that's really tricky about it is that it's not always a clear one-to-one relationship. Like, it's not like if I judge my husband, say, for being materialistic, it's not like my materialism looks the same as him. It's like
Right.
mine was a lot more of like I was appreciating the benefits from it. And so I was like, had secondhand materialism or something,
Yeah.
or I
Yeah.
had or I had materialism as it related to things like certain other things, like I liked jeans, or I liked my iPhone, or so there were ways that I still had materialism. But it doesn't, like Brene Brown, this, I'll botch this because it's not really her quote, it's a summary of her quote. But she says something to the effect of like that we judge in other people that which they are doing just a little bit worse than us.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I would even say a little bit differently than us, because,
Yes.
and one of the things that I also did when I was going through shadow work in the beginning, and I was starting to understand this a little bit more, I realized that it's also multifaceted. There can be ways where you're like, I don't ever do that. I don't ever do that. Never. I've never done that. And then I
I've said
say,
that.
yeah.
I've
And
said
then I say two things to that. First of all, you may have done it at a time you don't remember. But the other thing too is, did you ever have the impulse to do it?
yeah.
Because like um I may have never done some of the things that I judge other people for doing. But man, I have felt like doing it before.
Yep.
And so we still have some time, and so it can be a little bit complicated in that way, because you can easily say like, I've never done that, I never will do that, but you still don't have a good relationship with that part.
Yeah.
And so I invite people to still say, go in and do some inquiry on that part of you. Like, for example, I'm going to use an extreme example, but like one thing that most of us probably will not do is murder somebody. I would say for the most part. But I had to go to the place of, but what if I was in a situation where my life was in danger? What if I was in a situation where I even believed my life was in danger, but maybe it wasn't? Could I do that? Could I?
Mm,
If my children were in danger,
yeah.
if we were under certain circumstances. So sometimes we have to play out scenarios. And I've often said to people, if you walked a mile in that person's shoes,
Yeah.
you probably would do the same thing as them. It's just that based on your life, the life you've lived, you can't imagine ever doing that. And then one last one that I bring to people to consider is, if you believe in reincarnation, then maybe I haven't done it in this lifetime, but perhaps I did it in a prior lifetime. And so I can then get to, I don't know, maybe I was in a war and I killed people. Maybe I did. I don't know what I did in those previous lifetimes. And I think there was one other stretch out that I can say for us, is that because we are on, at some level, we are one.
Yeah.
That if we are one, then that means we are all. And that means that everything that anyone has ever done is in me. So I think of it, it's pretty existential in that way. But what do you think about
I would
those?
agree. And would you say that that last piece of it is similar to non-duality in the
Yeah.
sense that everything is included? Yeah. So I would
Yeah.
agree. And I agree about past lives, that certainly there's that. And then I want to go back to the first point that you brought up and to share an example of where I have this strong stance against like child abuse, physical like child abuse. I would never like abuse my child. But I will say that there were times when my kids were little that I was so on the verge of such like rage that I could feel that I could.
Yep.
And so there it is. And when they were really little, or if I, can remember like saying, all right, it's time to go. And they wouldn't go, and like getting really frustrated and really like, we need to go now. We're going to be late. Let's go. Let's go. And grabbing them by the arm and yanking, let's go. Like, and with a let's go now kind of thing. Well, I didn't really label that as being child abuse, but is it? Was it? It could be. If you ask my 4-year-old child, did that feel like mommy was, hurting you? Did it hurt your arm? Yeah, mommy hurt my arm when she yanked and pulled.
Mhm.
So there's where, a perfect example of how it can be in us, even when we think so strongly that it's not in us.
Yes, exactly. And thank you for sharing that. And I think that probably a lot of moms I know I can relate to that. And I think that it's hard because it is easy to kind of get on this high horse, right? It's get easy to get on a high horse about things and kind of feel like I would never do that. I never did do that. And then, but it is nuanced. It is. And one of
Very.
the examples, like around violence, um, I had to wrap my head around that, even though I haven't been physically violent, and definitely I can see some of those things that you just talked about. But even though this was one of the ways that I grappled with violence is, I have been verbally violent way too often than I care to admit. And I have hurt a lot of people through my verbal violence. And so even and really at the end of the day, we like to, as a society, talk about physical violence as worse, but
Yeah,
there are some people who would say verbal violence is far more damaging to their life than the verbal violence that they've experienced or the emotional violence that
I
they've
would
experienced.
agree.
So we have like like laws around, don't physically hurt a person, right?
Yep.
But we don't have as many laws about don't emotionally abuse people. And so when I look at it and say, yeah, so I haven't physically hurt somebody and I'm better than you because like you punched someone, but I just lashed out at that customer service person and probably made them humiliated and feel awful for the who knows how long in their future because they feel ashamed and demoralized. And I'm somehow okay and I'm not violent. No.
I love that example as well. And I just want to say, like, for the listeners that may be new to shadow work, that and understanding all this, that what you and I just illustrated is not now to like shame ourselves and like to be hard on ourselves. That's not the goal. The goal is to recognize and see that we have the tendencies, that we have these parts. And again, going back to what we've been saying in the beginning and all along, is now like, okay, so that part of you that you verbally abuse someone, or that part of me when I was physically, yanking my kids, or verbally, either or, can I go and include and integrate that part of me that I then back then was so ashamed of, because I felt so ashamed. It was way beyond guilt as a mom. I had shame. I had huge mommy guilt over it. And it's not about that. It's about shining the light now on that. Because, and again, this we're using Brene Brown a lot today. She talks about shame in a petri dish. And if you keep it covered and you keep it dark, it's just going to keep growing exponentially. But if you take the cover off and you shine the light, then then it can't keep growing. So this is about including and accepting that part of me, you, and the rest of the world.
Exactly. And coming into a relationship with it, being able to have compassion for why we did what we did when we did it. Like
Yeah.
I may know better now and I do better because I have healed the parts of me that were triggered by the powerlessness that I felt about customer service representatives.
Yeah.
You know, the parts of me that felt like someone wasn't listening to me and so I lashed out at them. Someone was pulling their energy away from me and so I went toward them. I was a fight, I have a fight response. Now I can have compassion for, oh, I get why I did that. Then I can have compassion I have to walk a mile in my own shoes. It's like I want to have
Mm,
compassion for other people so I can walk a mile in their shoes and say, well, hey, if I had been raised in their home with their circumstances and lived in the community that they lived in, these things happened and I didn't have these privileges and all this other stuff, then I might have done exactly what they did. Same with me. I have to look and go have compassion. I did get raised in my home. I did get raised with those things that were struggles for me. I did get abused in this way. These things did happen to me. And then because of that, I felt I needed to defend myself. And because I felt I needed to defend myself, that was the only way I knew how. Oh, now I can understand that. Now, how do I empower myself? How do I take action in the world to set boundaries for myself? How do I speak my truth without having to hate on another person or make someone else wrong? So it's like, it's really, it's like, yes, include, yes, love. But even before that, it's understand, have compassion, walk through the dark trials of our life to see why we did what we did, forgive ourselves for
yeah.
what we didn't know when we were back then. And then now the key is if you do know and you want to do better, then practice doing better. Right? Practice doing better because eventually we do have to um when we look at it. Part of the reason why a lot of people don't want to look at it is because they're not ready to change it.
Mm,
And the problem is if they're not ready to change it and you look at it, you'll probably just keep perpetuating it. And you're
yeah.
going to feel even more guilty because now you're going to really see it. Because I believe that our brains do cut off from our unconscious mind on purpose to keep us being able to survive in this very
Yeah.
messy life, this very messy and difficult life. So, but when we do get awareness of it, it does invite us to understand it, unpack it, unhook from it, and then choose a different path forward. And if we can't do that, it does kind of put us in this difficult place of it's hard to reconcile. Now I see my kind of quote unquote bad behavior. I don't want to do that, but I don't really know how to go forward.
And I think that that's the work that you and I do and so many others because we can hold space and we can help people to see the patterns and to see where it came from. Sometimes like people aren't even aware. Like you said, being able to go back to walk a mile in your own shoes and see where you came from. Some people aren't even willing to go back and look at that and where it came from. And we help people to safely and slowly uncover and look at the patterns and see where it came from so that they have a better awareness of
Yeah.
why they're doing what they're doing. And it was not, and the biggest thing, like when I was doing, the hypnosis with people and RTT, the biggest, like, aha for clients were when they could hear or say to themselves or hear me say, it's not your fault. It was not your fault. And when they could take that in,
Hmm.
there was such energetic shifts because they had been carrying for decades, a lifetime of I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm inherently not okay because of something that happened in their past or happened over and over and over in their past. So when they could understand it's not my fault, and that's part of what you're saying is walk a mile in their own shoes.
Yes, because even I don't want to say that we're not responsible for our actions.
Totally
We're
not.
responsible for our actions. And we can also have compassion for why we did the things we did.
Yeah.
We wear masks and we have coping mechanisms and we have armor because dang, it
Yeah.
wasn't safe for us to reveal ourselves. It wasn't safe to show up vulnerably. So we did these things because that's what got us to where we are. The question is, are we ready to start to unhook from those things? And you're right, that's the work that we do. And it's beautiful because we can, and we know for ourselves firsthand, for the clients that we've worked with, that we can unhook from this and that we don't have to carry the burden forever, that even the bad choices we made, every day is a new day. Every day is a new day. We
Yeah.
don't have to, yeah, lots of us have made lots of mistakes. lots of things that we regret. Every day's a new day. We can either keep on going on making those mistakes. I know, like, as a parent of teenagers, there's the concept of, like, you tell your kids, listen, if you made one bad choice, you don't have to keep making bad choices like for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? Like, if you made the bad choice to get in the car with a drunk driver, but you had a chance to get out of it, don't go get in the car with another drunk driver or
Yeah,
drive yourself home. Like,
exactly.
you get a chance, you can interrupt that pattern. Well, same with us. We've
Yeah.
made bad choices. We've done things. We've hurt people. We get a choice. Do we want to choose to live in integrity with wholeness and, the more healed parts of ourselves? If we do, every day's a new day. We have a new
Yeah.
opportunity.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. I just love that we are on this path together. And like I said, I'm so grateful that you planted that seed and that it just really, took me to a whole other level of consciousness. And the end result is absolutely beautiful. It's freedom, it's peace, it's joy. It's just so many things. So
It is.
I'm so grateful for all of this. So I have 5 questions for you. You might remember this from before, but they're just rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Uh-huh. Good thing I
Okay.
didn't.
And
I'm actually glad I don't remember them.
okay, good. So they may be same or similar answers. We'll see. And I do have one different question. So the first one is, what's your favorite food?
Peanut butter.
Ooh. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
Oh God, I think it would be like Baja.
Mm, okay. What is your favorite way to take care of yourself?
Mm. Right now, it's sitting in my bed in the morning, meditating, journaling, writing my new bullet journal.
Nice. Which I cannot wait to get my bullet journal.
With a heating pad on my back.
Oh,
It's just so nice. I get up, do a little exercise, and then jump back into bed and do that.
nice. That's
It's
beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. If, let's see, what would be the number one thing on your bucket list if you have one?
mm, I don't have one because I really do try to live doing the things I want to do in the moment. But I have to tell you, there is one thing that's on my list that I don't know if I'll ever do it because I just don't know if I'm just too scared, which is I
Mm.
think I want to go skydiving someday.
I knew you were going to say that. For some reason, I thought you were going to say skydiving.
That's so funny. You just know me too well.
Oh,
I don't think I've ever told you that before, but it does. I think I want to do it, but I don't think I could make that first jump.
oh my gosh. I hear you. I don't think I could either. But I think if you could, and people who have done it, it's life changing.
I know.
It's life changing. I don't know, maybe one day.
Maybe.
Name one book that changed your life.
One?
One book. Oh, I know. I just had a previous guest and she's like, I can't do it. Can't do one. I have too many.
Okay, I'll give you a book. Can I give you two?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But there are so many, I literally feel like I can't even bring myself to, it's too hard. But Homecoming by John Bradshaw
Okay.
and The Dark Side of the Light Chasers by Debbie Ford.
Okay.
And that's a great book for people who want to know more about the shadow,
Mm,
because that's what that's about. So, and
okay.
then Homecoming is about inner child work. So they're both hand in hand and awesome books.
Great. Thank you. So do you have one takeaway or tip for the listeners from this podcast?
Can I just say one thing about you that's I just first want to say,
Yes, please, please.
which is that I love that you fully like grokked, the idea of grokking, right? Like you got it in your body. You fully grokked this whole thing about the shadow. And I feel like now you're coaching me on it, which is cracking me up. Because just yesterday you were, and I just love that. I love that. I love you. You're
Thank
just
you for calling
amazing.
that out and naming that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, totally. It's awesome. So the one thing I want to say that is, I want to just bring this full circle to something that's just a little bit more positive.
Yeah.
Because this can feel heavy and dark. And
Sure.
shadows really aren't scary. They sound scary, right? Like the things that we put into the shadows are things we don't want to see.
Yeah.
But the shadow is actually the source of empowerment. it's a source of empowerment. And I believe doing shadow integration work is what will be I've said this already about like, the future of humanity, I think, is
Mm.
dependent on us doing our shadow work. I think that our individual lives, raising our children, regulating our nervous system, I think there are a gazillion ways that doing shadow work is just so critically important. And I think that it is the only way that we will find our own sense of contentment,
Mm.
because anything we're cut off from is going to just cause that fragmentation, that inner sense of emptiness, the inner sense of lack of wholeness, aloneness. Aloneness is us not
Ah,
knowing ourselves. Emptiness is us having holes inside of us that are the places that we've taken parts of ourselves out. So I just believe it's like a critical thing for us to be working on, and so glad that it's not just you and me they're working on this. There are lots of people who care about this right now. But I want to say this: the shadow is not just negative stuff either. And I like to I like to think about this like when we were little. I want you to even imagine like that you're like someone is like in their family room and she's like a little girl, she's 4 years old and she's spinning around and she's dancing and she's singing at the top of her lungs and she's just completely innocent. And then someone opens up the door and looks at her and gives her a big shh, and she immediately goes into shame. And now she is in this kind of crossroads in her life where she may have been totally internally oriented. She turned to be externally oriented for one.
mm.
She came to this conclusion in her mind: I can't just freely be myself. I have to watch out and be hypervigilant. Otherwise, I might get into trouble or get shamed. And then the third thing is maybe I should never dance and sing. And so, what happens in our future is we're the person who's at a wedding and we're in the corner watching everybody dance. And we are like, why do these people just feel so comfortable being free to dance and sing? Like, don't they realize that they're just like totally weird? And I'm so uncomfortable for them, right? And what we actually have is a shadow. And who knows if in our 50s we embrace that shadow, we might start taking ballet lessons, or we might start taking singing lessons, or go to karaoke, or just sing in our own house, or dance to music by ourselves. I thought I didn't dance because I got teased by my brothers. I didn't think I could ever dance. And I was like, completely cut that off. And then over the past 10 years, I have been embracing dancing. Now, do I really want to go dance other places? Not really. But in my own home, I love to dance. I love to sing. I am not a good singer, but who cares? I'm singing because I like it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to remind people of what's called the hidden shadow. The golden shadow, which is our hidden potential. So the golden shadow there too. So you envy somebody out there. You think somebody else is like you, either you totally respect that, or you think that who do they think they are? Right?
Yep.
Those are all golden shadows in us that we can
Mm.
reclaim, and we can be living more of our potential.
Beautiful. I was going to follow up with a story, but I'm not. I'm going to end it right there because that is a beautiful, beautiful takeaway.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. And I also learned from you on that as well, because you have, and I don't know if you want me to include the link, but don't you have a free
Yeah.
freebie for finding out about the golden shadow? Because I went through that.
Yep, I do. I do. In fact, it's been shifted a little bit to what I call, and we'll put it in the link at the links
Okay.
below, but is the A Curious Woman's Guide to Shadow
Mm,
Integration Work.
yeah.
And it's got that piece in it. And right in the beginning is finding your hidden potential. And then I, at the end, talk about using a more gentle approach to shadow integration work, because I think a lot of people get really hardcore about shadow work.
Mm,
And I think that we can do it really gently, really lovingly, and take our own cues from ourselves so that we don't rush anything, but
yeah.
we still reap the benefits of shadow integration work.
So awesome. So, so awesome. So how can the listeners find you if they want to find you?
I think the best way that they can find me is to just go to my website, which is thewholesoulway.com. And then everything is there.
Okay, awesome. And I will include that in the show notes as well.
Thank
I love doing this with you. This
you. Me
was so
too.
great. Thank you
Me
so
too.
much for coming on again. What a great conversation. So needed for sure.
So needed. And thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome. So thank you everybody listening to another episode of Masks Off. And if you like this conversation or this episode, I would love for you to subscribe or give a thumbs up. You can even comment or rate, and it would be so appreciated. So I'll see you next time on Masks Off.